There are companies within the video game industry that make billions of dollars a year off of us and our entertainment, so it's really no surprise that they want to protect their positions as much as possible, and they would go as far as to target initiatives that go against them. And right now, Stop Killing Games is suspiciously being targeted by an anonymous transparency complaint amidst surging support. I have a few different things to show off, but before I get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community in my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Now, of course, these companies do not play fair. The certain groups that they're a part of, like Video Games Europe, do not want to play fair, and really they just want to protect their positions within the industry. So the fact that Stop Killing Games has been targeted by so many people that are a part of the industry and anonymous sources isn't particularly shocking to me and many other people. So in a dramatic twist for the movement to preserve video games, the European Citizens Initiative, known as Stop Destroying Video Games, a separate campaign associated with SKG, has been hit with an anonymous transparency complaint in the EU. This development comes just as the petition surpassed 1.4 million signatures, edging closer to potential legislative action in the European Union. The complaint, relayed by the European Commission, accuses the initiative's organizers of violating EU transparency rules by allegedly concealing funding sources and providing a false no-funding declaration. Now, of course, I'm sure you all already know what Stop Killing Games is. I've talked about it many times on the channel. So many content creators are talking about it, which I just want to say is fantastic, because while I don't technically want like government overreach in video games, and I don't want governments to be paying attention to our entertainment, at this point in time, there's no alternative for gamers. Sure, we can go on social media, we can voice how unhappy we are, but for years now, companies have taken advantage of us, and they do not care about respecting our dollar and our purchase or us in general. So I do think that it is important that they do finally get slapped in the face with reality, and it just seems that this is the only avenue that we have to go down at this point. It says, though, that, of course, Scott and supporters argue that publishers should not be allowed to render purchased games unplayable by shutting down servers without providing alternatives such as offline modes or private server support. And, of course, the industry wants to present it as if we're asking for something completely unrealistic when, first of all, we're buying a game to play it. I should be able to play it in 5 years, 10 years, whenever the heck I want. But we're not asking for them to go back and edit games and alter games. We're not asking them to go back 10 years ago, right, when live services became super popularized, and that's when like the big wave of live services really started being developed that are releasing now. We're not asking them to go back into their catalogs. We're just asking them going forward to create offline modes, going forward to allow private server support, things like that. Of course, they're saying it's unrealistic and that, oh my gosh, we can't protect players on private servers. All of this bullshit, because they want to come up with any excuse in the book so that they don't have to put more work and effort in. But it's very clear that gamers are willing to speak up on issues they feel passionately about, and that is protecting their purchases, which anybody really should be passionate about. It says, while the broader Stop Killing Games effort includes global petitions and awareness drives, the EU-specific initiative Stop Destroying Video Games is a separate entity with its own organizers, launched to push for new EU laws mandating end-of-life plans for online games. It requires at least 1 million valid signatures from EU citizens to prompt the European Commission to consider legislative proposals. As of July 22nd, 2025, the initiative has amassed over 1.4 million signatures, exceeding the threshold and building a buffer for potential invalid entries, which I think is great. There's only a couple more days left on it, but it has gotten a hell of a lot of support over the past, couple of weeks, especially the past like 2 or 3 weeks. It's been very, very prominent online. But the controversy erupted on July 21st when Ross Scott announced in a YouTube video titled "The Industry Filed False Claims Against the Stop Killing Games Initiative" that the EU campaign had received a formal transparency complaint. The anonymous filing, passed on by the European Commission, alleges two main violations: a false declaration of no funding in the initiative's EU listing and systematic concealment of major contributions. At the heart of the complaint is Scott's personal involvement. The document claims that Scott's extensive volunteer hours, often described by him as full-time dedication, exceeded any reasonable volunteer threshold and constitutes as in-kind contribution valued at 63,000 to 147,000 euros based on assumed professional hourly rates. This, the complaint argues, should have been disclosed as funding, especially given his public role as the campaign's figurehead and frequent media portrayals of him as its leader. I think that it's so funny that right now the industry is attacking gamers, saying what you're asking for is unrealistic. And it seems, now of course we don't know, so right, it's just a tinfoil hat theory by literally everybody online, that some company filed this, some company's trying to go after him, right, and get him in trouble, that instead of actually giving us legitimate arguments as to why our requests are so unrealistic and why they can't actually give us what we want, they're just trying to, behind the scenes, get Stop Killing Games shut down, right? They're trying to have basically millions upon millions of gamers silenced without having to, of course, take responsibility, because they don't really, at this point in time, at least publicly, have a good explanation for why they can't give us what we're asking for in the future. And again, if they even said, oh, it'll take 2 years or 3 years to implement this, that would at least be something. But games used to have offline modes in every single instance. You would think that it wouldn't be that hard for them to go back to, but of course they're lazy, right? They're hiring juniors who don't actually know how to make video games, so they're really, I guess, finding themselves in a bit of a pickle of their doing, but a pickle nonetheless. So under EU rules for citizens' initiatives, organizers must declare any funding sources exceeding 500 euros per sponsor. The initiatives page on the official EU site lists no such funding, which the complaint deemed misleading. However, EU protocols for handling complaints emphasize investigation and correction rather than immediate penalties. The Commission will request a reasoned response from the organizers and may seek additional information before deciding on any actions. Now, of course, in a video, he denied the allegations, describing them as false claims and expressing frustration at becoming a political target, and that is exactly what is happening at this point in time. The people in this industry have billions and billions of dollars to throw at their problems, and unfortunately, they are not going to stop very easily. Just because a couple million gamers speak out, a couple million gamers are upset, they will continue to fight against initiatives like this because it hurts their bottom line, because they'd have to change, and because ultimately they would be yielding control to their customer base, and they do not want that to happen. It says that he holds no actual authority over the EU initiative, which has distinct organizers, and that he has not been listed among them. He further noted that the organizers consulted EU representatives in spring 2024 and were assured his assistance complied with regulations. He speculated that the complaint might originate from games industry representatives, pointing to its timing shortly after statements from industry lobby groups opposing the initiative. And you also have Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot coming out and saying that, yeah, I mean, what we're asking for is unrealistic, which is a major, major red flag in this case. We have people speaking up about this and how, ridiculous our claims are and how ridiculous our requests are. And then this happens. Yeah, that's pretty suspicious in my opinion. Despite the setback, he remains optimistic, highlighting growing support from European Parliament members in the petition's momentum, which I'm really glad to see that this is actually getting a hell of a lot of attention. But I do truly hope that we actually see something come from this, because a lot of companies seem to hold grudges, right? We're talking about a lot of people in the industry who believe that gamers are wrong and they're correct, and it wouldn't really surprise me if now we see a ramp up in online only games and live service games if Stop Killing Games doesn't actually go anywhere. Wouldn't surprise me that they'd basically try to throw it back in our faces and say, see, we still have the control. So I do hope that something comes from this. I'm glad that it's getting so much attention, and if you can sign it, of course, I do highly recommend that you take the couple of minutes and go and do that. But right now, the EU initiative is being targeted by anonymous transparency complaints points amid surging support, and it seems really freaking suspicious. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, and if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I'll talk to you all again in the next video really soon.